Hello, and thanks for tuning in. This is my review and book-to-movie comparison of Trainspotting by Irvine Welsh. This is the second book I've read by Irvine Welsh, and I wouldn't recommend it to people who are easily offended by vulgar language or by drug use or sex. Now, I would recommend it to people if you're interested in reading about different cultures or subcultures even, because this is one of the reasons, this is one of the main points I want to put into this, to emphasize why I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. Now, when it comes to a book-to-movie translation, I really think that the movie kind of glamorized the heroin usage and the lifestyle instead of really showing the depravity and the depressed state that I think the author was trying to emphasize that he did a very good job of doing in the book. One thing I would recommend, if you have not seen the film yet, I would definitely recommend reading the book before you see the film, just for that reason, so that you know, like, really why the book was written, that it's not to glamorize heroin use, which I think a lot of, like, people misconstrued the whole Trainspotting film to think it was glamorizing heroin use when it wasn't really. Another reason why I suggest reading the book before seeing the film is that there are so many characters and so many different scenes that just, you know, to keep track of them all, like if you had seen the film and then read the book, you're kind of expecting a different angle on things. And there are different characters that have different roles in the film. Like, there are certain characters in the film that just, you know, the book characters did not all make it to the film translation. For example, there's a character called Second Prize, and it takes a lot of roles in the book, and he should have been in those scenes in the film, but he just was never there. Also, there is the couple of funerals that were in the Trainspotting film, but they were different people in the book. But it was good that he mentioned the funerals, because they really emphasized how, like, during the 80s and early 90s, there were a lot of high concentrations of people that were HIV positive in Scotland, not only from heroin use, like sharing needles, but from, you know, unprotected sex, etc. And I think they only briefly touched upon that in the film. I think they only used one funeral in the film, where there was like maybe 2 or 3 different funerals in the book, people that had died of HIV/AIDS. Another thing I wanted to mention that was extremely different was the fact that the film never really touched upon what the economy was like and why people they felt compelled to do heroin, because there was high rates of unemployment, which I gathered from the first book I had read from Irvine Welsh, Glue. If you're interested in seeing my review of that, it's in my video section. But he also mentions that again in Trainspotting, how there is a high rate of unemployment. And please don't be offended by this. I do have, like, Scottish and Irish ancestry, so this isn't like anything to take offense to. I'm just quoting from the book. But one of the characters is quoted as saying that it's not Ireland that is considered the lowest place in the UK. It's technically Scotland, and he says that Scotland is shite, basically is what he said. Now, I'm not saying Danny Boyle didn't do a good job. He did a very good job. Like, for instance, the scene where Rotten had lost the suppositories in the toilet. It was a bit over the top, but it made for a very creative and imaginative scene. It didn't quite happen that way in the book, but he did a good job of illustrating that, and I think the book had a more disgustingly scene of how dirty the bathroom really was. I mean, it was pretty rank. But there were extra scenes in the book that were not in the film, that kind of added to the story. There were some minor characters. It was sometimes hard to keep track of all of the characters because there were just so many different, characters mentioned. Sometimes they didn't even mention names that you were just supposed to assume because everything is written in the first person. It's everything except for the last story. The very last story of the book is the one where Renton betrays his mates and steals the money, just like in the movie. Spoiler if you have not seen the film. But that was another instance where it was slightly different in the film than it was in the book. But overall, I'm going to try to keep this short because I hate, when people do book reviews, and I've done it myself, you make the reviews way too long. It's a 4 out of 5 star book. I thought it was very well written. It's written the way Scottish people speak. It gave me a very good impression of, how depressing life could be in Scotland, being poor, unemployed, and feeling like you have no hope and maybe wanting to inject heroin. And then the despair of like HIV and all that. It was a really good, perfect example of that. I really like the way Irvine Welsh had described these. It's almost like he has lived this life, so he, took from life. And it's a good read, yeah. So that is my review part, like book to movie translation discussion. If there's anything you think I missed, or if you have any thoughts about either of these two things, please leave a comment down below and let me know what you think. So, that's it. Later, guys.